And thank you for joining today's webinar, How to Successfully Migrate to the Cloud with Chef and AWS. My name is Kurt Young. I'll be taking you through today's discussion. We will have this webinar available, recorded webinar available after. During the webinar, if you have any questions, you can use the pane there to enter your questions on the side. And yeah, let's get right into it. And at the end, of course, we'll do any Q&A at the end. So looking at today's agenda, so I wanted to set the stage first before talking about migrations. I know we have many on the call today who may be new to Chef. So we'll start off with some overview of infrastructure management and how Chef delivers this. Then an overview of the Chef 360 platform and Chef Courier. This was a new offering that we released last year, which is all about orchestration. Very, very cool stuff. So excited to talk about that. Then we'll talk more detail around how we can use these tools to help with the migration. Finish up with a short demo. And like I said before, we'll get into some Q&A at the end. So to begin, we can look at these four areas which highlight the importance of infrastructure management, right? Starting off with confidence through code, right? And the most important aspect to obtain this level of confidence, right, is through testing, right? Constant testing of infrastructure as code is essential, right? the biggest part of it. And having the ability of testing this code across these different platforms, right, makes it even more necessary, right? We're talking about today, going from on-prem to a cloud. Now, this also includes, having as much of the infrastructure as you can as code, right? And this will help you, obviously, in the long run. Which is really where the ability to manage all of these unique systems happens, right? Regardless of the underlying infrastructure, regardless of whether we're running our code on premises or in the cloud, or both, right? Different operating system. The code that we create, right, can be flexible enough to adapt. Eliminate drift and misconfigurations, right, using automation. Every system within the infrastructure has a desired state, right? And when that desired state diverges from what's defined, the system should be and will be automatically corrected, right? From a security perspective, this is really important, right, to minimize vulnerabilities. Say the team, your team may be working on troubleshooting a connectivity issue, right, and start to adjust firewall settings on the system. They open up more access than necessary, really, to attempt to either identify or address the issue. And many times, right, if that change didn't resolve the problem, typically it's forgotten, right, about, and it's not reverted back, right. Now, of course, if more access was necessary, then the code should be updated to reflect this change, right? Otherwise, through automation, right, what will happen is the firewall settings will be reset back to the original settings, right, on that scheduled interval, right? So you don't need to really worry about it, right, or think about doing that manually. It'll be done for you automatically. And finally, flexibility. So the solution must be really easily extendable, right, to support, as it says here, of course, those most common configurations, but also support more unique requirements as well. And again, we'll talk more about that as we go through the webinar. Now, more around capabilities, right? First, we have to create the infrastructure as code. This, of course, is not an overnight effort, but like I said before, well worth it in the end, right? And then, of course, we're going to test again, and test more. The system state, or like I mentioned before, the desired state, using automation, whether you're doing planned or unplanned updates, right, with that tested code, the outcomes, of course, are going to be more consistent, right, and there's going to reduce that human error. Ephemeral resource management, right, big problem with cloud. Using infrastructure as code to ensure that those systems that are temporary are exactly that, right? You can automate the cleanup of these systems on that regular interval. Now, of course, there's other solutions, including some built-in capabilities in the cloud that offer this kind of cleanup and things like that. But tool consolidation is really another piece to infrastructure management, which could be leveraged, right, and simplify things. Security and compliance, right, a big area for infrastructure management. You have regulatory or compliance needs, right? These are really key to this overall solution. Continuous compliance, right? Scanning of systems and clouds, right? To really ensure that the use of best practices are put in place, right? For securing those environments, right? Using things like CIS benchmark profiles or STIG profiles to scan systems and environment, right? The cloud. You can create your own profiles, based on any unique requirements. And at the end, most think Chef is just code. Yes, we have a lot. Infrastructure as code, is part of it, but we do have user interface, right? And we're expanding capabilities through user interface, right? By getting those visuals with dashboards, reports, integration with third-party tools like Splunk, right? ServiceNow, as an example. Having the ability to audit, right? History of changes happening in the environment. You even get visuals reviewing the cookbooks and recipes. And these, of course, and we'll talk about these in more detail, or the blueprint, right, of those systems that are running within the environment. So how does this all kind of come together under what Chef provides? Again, on top, we're talking about change safely, right? Since infrastructure as code, documents your infrastructure state. This tested code, right? It can be controlled through pipelines, right? Allows for change review, approval with versioning. That test-driven development right from the beginning. Maintaining consistency, right? That single code base, whether you're running on premises or in the cloud, again, or both, is going to self-correct any of that configuration drift, right? Again, using that firewall troubleshooting example. And security compliance, right? All the systems resources are continuously evaluated, right? Not just once when they're deployed. It's continual evaluation, and then automatically, corrected to meet the needs around that compliance or requirements. And certainly, last but not least, is scale. This is where Chef really shines, right? And it's our ability to scale, right? Like it says here, you'll build 1 or build 1 million systems, right? Depending on the needs. Although we do have the ability to work agentless, and this is great for infrastructure components, things like that, where you may not be able to install an agent, right? But we believe that using the Chef agent, this client, it's a small footprint on the systems, is really the best approach, right? Having this approach, right, allows for those managed nodes to have those agents deployed locally, right, and then pull the configurations rather than having them pushed from a single location. Now, this, of course, is going to allow us to scale better, but also from a security standpoint, it's a really better approach, right? Since Chef doesn't need to authenticate, right, to all of these systems every time it's running these cookbooks and jobs, right? Using things like SSH or WinRM, right, to make those configuration changes. We just need to interact with that agent on those systems. So moving on to the Chef 360 and Courier and what this brings, which is really another layer to infrastructure management, which is all around orchestration. Now, the Chef 360 platform is just that, right? It's a platform. It's a foundation, right? and it will continue to be the foundation for all things Chef, right? And at the center is this core functionality. It's got user management and authentication, monitoring, scaling, security, and then these 5 pillars around, right? So you have infra, right, which is what Chef has been offering since the beginning, right? Which is this hub for all of the configuration data. It stores cookbooks, policies, associated metadata. Right? You have Inspec, which is that engine that runs the compliance scans, and Habitat, right, which is for application packaging and delivery. Now, currently, Chef 360 platform has these 2 new offerings, right, which is node management. This is going to be, of course, a requirement to work with any nodes that you're, running any infrastructure as code against, and Chef Courier, which is that orchestration offering. Now, we continue to extend this Chef 360 platform, right, to include all the functionality that's required across this tool set. The initial launch was really just around Courier and node management, but these other pieces will be coming to the platform, and we do actually have the ability to interact with some of these components today, such as Inspec, where we can run Inspec scans through Courier as an example. Also, around the Chef 360 is we've just launched a beta of the Chef 360 SaaS. So you'll have the ability to install this, either on-prem or in the cloud, but also have it as a SaaS offering as well. Now, Courier, right, from this orchestration solution, this offering, can really be summed up across these 3 dimensions. And it's the way how we kind of define it is the wherever, the whenever, and the whatever. So the wherever is about how the orchestration jobs are run. Selecting what nodes you want to run the job against, whether you're going to be using a query against, finding out, based on certain criteria of the nodes, or you can even do saved lists of nodes. The distribution of the job, right? You want to run them in parallel, sequential, in batches, what size batch, right? This kind of stuff is really useful to control, for instance, running updates on systems that need to maybe maintain a quorum, right? So you could say, run only on 2 systems within this group of nodes at a time, and then only if that job is successful, move on to the next batch, right? Until all those systems are updated. So if you have a cluster, right, you're not updating all systems at once and interrupting access, right? Or if there's a problem, right, you're not continuing on because the patch, broke the system, right? If the patch isn't, if the patch isn't successful, we'll stop the job at that point, so we're not causing any other disruption. The whenever is the scheduling component, right? We want to run it now or schedule it in the future. Does it need to be reoccurring? Should there be any exceptions to the schedule? As an example, should run every Thursday at 2 a.m. Except for the 3rd Thursday, at the end of every quarter, because of the application that's being run there. And the whatever. So of course you can use those cookbooks and recipes that we've had for a long time. Inspec scans, as I mentioned before, can be run. But you can also interact directly with the system using scripts and commands directly without running those cookbooks. You can actually just run things directly that way. And this can be extended to include third-party tools or interacting directly via API also. So what benefits does Chef Courier bring to the organization? Right, controlling all those dimensions of change rollout, right? That wherever, whenever, and whatever, right? And having the ability to solve these complex problems, right, in a way that's going to be very effective and efficient. Reactive work made easy, right? And we do that by first providing that level of control, right? How patches or updates are run across the infrastructure. And second, democratize DevOps, right? Make it easy to use. We've recently introduced a very intuitive user interface to Courier to allow more teams to really confidently use these tools, right? So it's not all CLI, not all command line. Tool consolidation, right? If you start looking at all of the different tools in the environment that you may be using, even around infrastructure management, the effort to get teams kind of trained on these, and obviously the more you have, the more difficult it is to maintain them. Chef can help consolidate, right? Using that infrastructure's code across all aspects of the infrastructure, as well as compliance, and the application packaging with Habitat. We talked before about that cloud cleanup, right? Why add more tools to manage, right? If you're already doing infrastructure management with Chef, you just do more with the tool. And finally, future ready, right? With this platform, we built this platform from the ground up, right? It's built, cloud native, open standards, microservices architecture, which can be really easily extended. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about infrastructure management and kind of some ways that Chef does that, right? And we're just at this point just scratching the surface, right? Talking about this at a very high level, right? We obviously have other webinar series that get more in the weeds, more technical. We have a masterclass series that we talk about different topics of Chef. So if you or members of your team are interested, right, in learning more about Chef and all the things it can do, you can look out for those sessions. I mean, obviously we have all of the prior ones recorded and available. I think last year we did six or seven of them, and we're continuing to do more this year. So again, that was quick kind of overview. And again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds since I know a lot maybe new to Chef. So let's see how this all kind of plays into the migrations. Let me build this out. So from any edge to any cloud and everything in between, right? From both a configure, deploy, and manage, and from a security and compliance. So this is, again, somewhat of a aspirational statement, right? I'm sure someone could come in and say, that there's some system or device that we can't manage, right? And there's probably a good argument that if with what we have built Chef on, we could, right, based on the demand or business rationale, right, or building some more custom components to do that. Because we're agnostic, right? So regardless of operating system, architectures, you're talking about containers, VMs, bare metal, we can really manage and touch all of these at scale, right, as I mentioned before. We have both agent and agentless, and we have something called resources, right, which are used in Chef recipes to bring systems to that desired state, to work with systems. And we look at we'll look at some of these more and more detail when we get to the demo. But we continue to add more resources so we can manage more within the infrastructure. It's going to allow us to do more across more pieces of the infrastructure. But there's also the ability, like I said, to create custom resources, right, to extend beyond what comes out of the box, right, for again, components of the infrastructure that may not be covered. So when it comes to migration from on-premises to the cloud, which is the title of this webinar, and in this example, AWS, these blueprints, right, that are created, which define that desired state of that system to be migrated. And again, we call these, cookbooks and recipes. These tested blueprints can be run against systems running in the cloud, right? In this example, to get that system to that desired state. And the best part of this approach, right, is that we're not limited to, in this example, AWS, right? We're not limited to migrations just from on-premises to the cloud, right? We have conversations with many customers that leverage Chef to migrate from cloud back to on-premises or between clouds, right? And even between, in between hypervisors on premises, to and from bare metal servers on premises, right? All directions. And whether this reason is due to cost, right, or maybe an increase of cost to run systems on that platform or cloud. Maybe it's due to scale, where you need more resources to deliver some functionality for a business critical system running in the environment. Or maybe there's a region, right, in a certain cloud that you need to deploy an application to, right? Either way, right, this flexibility is going to allow you to effectively migrate systems without that fear of vendor lock-in, right? Because again, all of these systems, you can't just pick up a server from one hypervisor and drop it on another, or from a cloud to a hypervisor and vice versa. So it allows you to move systems, where you want, when you want, right, and do it with confidence with that tested code that's created in those blueprints. So here's an example. And it's actually the one that we're going to use in the demo next, where we have just a simple web server that we want to migrate to AWS. So we can deploy a Linux server, out of the AWS marketplace, right? Just a vanilla server. Install that Chef agent on it, and then we can run this recipe against it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Git and Apache web service on this new system. And we're going to be doing that using this package resource. And then we're going to go ahead and enable it and start the Apache web service using that service resource. The next steps here, we're going to ensure that the directory for that website is created. And then we're going to copy the web pages from this GitHub repo into this directory, right? So obviously for this demo, right, we only have a few pages up there, but you can have thousands of pages up there, right? And we're going to sync this down to our system, right, and get it into that directory to get the website up and running. This step, we're able to set permissions on the file and directory level, right? So that website is going to function as expected. And then this last step, right, we're just going to do a simple restart of the Apache service just to make sure that all of the settings and everything takes effect properly. So once again, right, this is a very simple recipe blueprint, right, of a web server. And typically these cookbooks are going to include much more, right, to set system all system parameters to get that system to that desired state that you're looking for. Okay, so we're going to go through this demo real quick, and I'll walk you through it of what we're doing here, and we will be using the new user interface for Chef Courier to create this job to run our cookbook. We've already what we call enrolled the node into Chef 360 platform. So we can just go right ahead and start looking at running this job to get that system to the desired state. So first thing we're going to do is we'll just go ahead and open up what this web page looks like, web demo 1, right? So this is the system that's running on-prem that we want to move to the cloud. So if we look at web demo 2 here, we'll see nothing comes up, right, because no web server or pages are available. Then we'll go look at GitHub here, right? First thing we're going to look at is our cookbook and recipe. So this is what we just looked at on the prior slide, which walks through all of the steps of installing Git, Apache, syncing down the Git repo, and then setting permissions and restarting Apache. The other GitHub repo is where the web pages are stored. So under this HTML pages, right, we'll see we just have an images directory and a couple pages here. This of course can be an entire website made up of thousands and thousands of pages as well. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a courier job to run this cookbook, right? Now there's a few ways you can do it, where you can use these node lists and filters, or you can add nodes manually using a query, right? So if we go to AWS, we'll go ahead and choose this Ubuntu server that we spun up out of the marketplace. Let's copy that IP address. First, we'll put it in the browser just to show that we are accessing this system. And then go ahead and enter the query, which matches that IP address. And this is where you can enter those batch sizes, right, and how you want to run the job, right? It's one system, so it's less important, right, at this point. But we'll go ahead and install Apache and just give it a name, right? And then we're going to go ahead and select the skill. Now, this is how we're going to interact with the system. And we're going to use the Chef client, which is going to run that cookbook. But as you can see, there's other ways using inspect or a shell interpreter to run commands directly. So with that Chef client, we're just going to go ahead and paste in the cookbook and recipe that we want to run. And then we can set some other attributes about retry and all that stuff. And then the job name, we'll just give it a name. We'll copy that name into a description. And we'll just click Save Job. So we'll see this list of jobs that are getting created. This is our active job here. We'll do a couple of refreshes here to show that we have a live job instance running now. And we'll see it's in a running state. And it's successful. Now we can see that the web page actually came up automatically on Web Demo 2. So now we've actually installed Git, installed Apache, copied our web pages down, applied those web pages, restarted the service, and now the system is now replicated as the one that we had on-prem to migrate to the cloud. Again, a very simple kind of example. You can get as complicated as you can imagine with some of the systems that are running in the environment. So before we jump into Q&A, kind of where you can learn more, there's a Learn Chef, which has different tracks that you can access to learn more about Chef. I also mentioned those webinars, which you can find those past webinars and keep an eye out for future ones at this link here. If you want to obtain a free trial, right, you can access a free trial of Chef as well if you wanted to try it out for yourself. And then I also mentioned before about the Chef 360 SaaS beta, which has some forms here that you can fill out if you're interested in getting into that beta program. So now we can jump over to Q&A. Let me go into, do we have any questions? Okay, I do see a question here. Can I use Chef to manage network devices like switches, routers, and firewalls? So short answer is yes, you can. Now, you would have to go, we were talking before about agent versus agentless. You would have to go agentless, or what we call target mode. Since most of those, all of those devices are not going to support the installation of that agent, right? So depending on what you needed to do on those devices, you may be in need for a custom resource to be built out for that. But the short answer is you could manage all of those devices using an agentless approach. Let me see if I have any other questions. Okay, I have a question. Yeah, how can I get started writing code to manage my infrastructure? Again, you can use some of those resources I mentioned before, like example, Learn Chef. That's of course the route that I would recommend. Here you can kind of start off with some of the free learning tracks to get kind of the basics of Chef. Even again, go ahead and get a trial to test out some of those learnings, and you can always advance to some more advanced training later as well. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Let's give it one more minute. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions. Well, everyone, thanks for joining. Again, this webinar will be made available after we finish up. So again, thanks for your time today and joining the webinar, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.